brilliant creator of this book, Teaching Words and How They Work, on our show. Dr. Elfrieda Hiebert, otherwise known as Freddy Hiebert, she was on our show just recently sharing some really revolutionary ideas about vocabulary instruction. And I want to continue in this theme for the next couple of weeks to really unpack some of the key concepts. And tonight we're going to be talking about really small changes that can make big vocabulary results. This is inspired from her subtitle. And we're going to talk tonight about vocabulary in context with narrative text. Our children are coming to us, many of them, with limited vocabulary knowledge. And we want to share as much of the English language in oral or written form with them as possible. And yet, it's tricky and we have limited time and there's so many words. She came on and said the English dictionary could have, as many as 600, 700,000 words. And she said, which ones do you teach? Well, she's got a strategy for that. So we're going to unpack some of her ideas in the next few weeks. Our topic again is small changes for big results. This is the subtitle of Dr. Freddy's book, and I just want to unpack and give you really concrete examples of how to make her ideas get started. Maybe tomorrow. How does that sound? 2 weeks ago, again, we had this wonderful guest whose work I've been following for many years and has heavily influenced Reading Simplified, mostly on the word learning, word reading side in terms of word frequencies. That's really impacted how we teach here at Reading Simplified. But her vocabulary information is really powerful too, and I don't dive deep into that much, so that's why we're spending a focus on that. Small changes for big vocabulary results. So before we jump into some of our tips, I want to set the stage. Why is it important? What's the big deal? Really get you motivated. So here's what's coming. Tonight we're going to be talking about narrative texts for vocabulary building, how you can associate the text that you're already reading or that you want to add to your repertoire, and how you would associate the particular vocabulary with that. And then also later next week, we'll talk about informational texts. If you have to learn by 12th grade, the end of 12th grade, 50,000, how is that possible? We know a lot of third graders, typically developing third graders, may know about 10,000. So between third grade and 12th grade, they've got to learn about 3,000 to 4,000 words a year, which comes out to, if you divide 180 school days, about 16, 17 words a day. A day, folks. Who can teach their students 16 words a day and that they're mastered? That's intimidating, right? But don't worry, it's not all up to you. A little bit of more statistics, though, to kind of get your mind wrapped around how big this issue is. Another estimate is that students need to read 1,000 words to be able to learn a new vocabulary word. So if you think about a typical typewritten page, it's about 250 words, double-spaced typical typewritten page, like the pages you wrote in college. So that would mean 4 of those pages, you have to read those just to learn 1 word. So that's a lot of reading, but not a novel. So a lot of reading is important, right? Right? That's right. Per day. 16 words per day to get to about 3,000 per year. Does anyone's curriculum call for 16 words a day? It doesn't sound realistic, does it? We're going to address some ways in which it might be possible. So another really important kind of orienting stat and graph here I want to show you. This is a very well-known study. I've talked about it a lot, looking at, I think it was 4th and 5th graders and how much time they spent reading. And the kids there at the upper end of the graph, 98th percentile, look, they almost read 5 million words a year. And look what the kids at the 50th percentile read. They read a little bit more than 500,000. So if you think about that, how many words you have to read to be able to learn a vocabulary, who is going to be out in the lead? It's our big readers, right? We have to get our kids reading rapidly. Even at the 90th percentile, the kids who are really reading a lot, but not like the 98th percentile in terms of volume read, they're only consuming a little bit more than 2 million words. So volume of reading is a big deal for learning vocabulary knowledge, and the more we can do to inspire our kids to read more, the better we are. And look, if you think about it, if this is the norm, anything you do to move your kids up the 90% and below, another 20,000, 100,000, 1 million words in a year, you're making a big change. You're shifting this graph a lot. And so before we get into vocabulary, I just want to remind you, that's one of the main reasons that I have done the work of Reading Simplified. Finding a really streamlined way to get kids rapidly able to read words so that they can read widely and early on, be successful, feel happy about themselves, and read more. Because when we have an identity as I'm successful at this, we tend to do the thing that we're good at. So we've created an approach that streamlines the approach to teaching word recognition here at Reading Simplified. We're not really talking about word recognition tonight, but I want to make it clear it's one of the biggest levers that you can give kids is giving them quick access to the code. Okay, one of the really exciting concepts that Dr. Hiebert came out with is that 90% of the words that kids need to read to know when they're in high school can be reduced to about 2,500 word families. And a word family is just a collection of words that have a lot of similarities. Like she used the example of glory, glorious, inglorious. Anything related to that one word would be a family that's tied to glory. So 2,500, that's not that scary as compared to the numbers that we were talking about, 3,000 words a year. There is some overlap in the concepts. So she's saying, let's be strategic about making sure we're getting to that 2,500 word families. And what are the ways that we can do this? We've talked about this here before at Reading Simplified. What are the big rocks? Well, with vocabulary reading, knowledge, the big two really are teacher and other adult and maybe mature children oral interaction. The more we hear sophisticated language and use it orally, the more words we will learn. But then written language is probably the biggest lever because there are so many words and there's limited time to talk, but you can be exposed to a lot more words in text, right, than you can be in everyday interaction, oral interaction. And then I put this other lever there. I want to make sure it's not just listening and not just reading, very receptive. It's also the students taking action, students working with the words, writing them. That's a really big deal, and using them. But let's think about our language as teachers, using high-level words, elaborating on those words and defining them, asking the students to do the same, and then also giving them exposure to lots of written language, and so that they can more rapidly learn more and more words. So what is Dr. Freddy's big revolution? She says, let's overturn this mainstream approach to reading instruction, particularly vocabulary. So give a thumbs up if you have seen a reading program like a reading series or a basal reading program that suggests that you read a book and then you focus on 5 to 6 words that are probably unknown to the student that are tied to that book. Often these words are just picked because they're challenging and they don't relate to the theme of the book and they don't relate to one another. It makes some sense. It's like teaching kids words over and over again is unmanageable, it may seem. So that was her big idea, is to change it away from that tradition to a network. And when you show the relationships of words, it's a lot easier for kids to learn a lot more words. So we don't pick words randomly. We pick them strategically based on how we can build and expand connected ideas. And that's what we know, that's how our brain works. It's little neurons making connections across lots of parts of the brain, this idea to this idea and this idea to this idea. And the more exposures we have to different ideas that are related, the stronger the depth of knowledge on a particular concept, or in this case, words. So she gave this example in her book. Annie's Gift is a little story that's in a reading series, and they picked out 6 words. This is her 5 to 8 word approach that is the norm. And look at these words with me: accept, stomped, entertain, carefree, sipped, screeching. I think this is a 3rd grade reading series. Seems like words that the 3rd graders may not know. Do you see any connection among the words? Not so much. Do they relate to the theme of the book? Well, if you haven't read the book, you might not know. But it's about a girl who is listening to her siblings demonstrate their talent with musical instruments, and she feels frustrated when she tries various instruments and can't do it. And then finally she finds her gift, not something she receives, but some natural talents that she has. So does accept or stomped or entertain relate to that? No. So this is a list of words that are unrelated. They're not related to one another, and they're not related to the story, other than that was one thing that was maybe used, of course. Entertain might be something that is more thematic. So what are we going to do instead of that? So instead of this random list of words, let's build this network. So this is what we prefer. Can make connections among those words. So here's an example of the random list. And she's saying that's probably not the most effective. It's probably not going to get us 16 words a day. It's disjointed. It's not how the brain learns most easily. On the other hand, a connected list of words that are in a network is much easier for the brain to learn, and it can learn more all at once. So this is an example from Annie's Gift in her book. So here in Annie's Gift, this is just one possible network. There's so many that you can do with a given book, but she puts music at the center, and one category off on your left is music events. The words performance, lesson, entertain, entertainment, the word program, and delivered. Those are all things related to music events that may or may not have been in the book. So the idea is not that you have to stick tight to the words in the book. It's that some of the concepts in the book and some of the words in the book can be built on and connected rather, and then built on and expanded. Another one is she's got this list of instruments: the recorder, trumpet, cello, the bass, brass, and a mahogany piano. And on the right, sounds when Annie plays: screeching, croaking, squawked, squeak, like a diesel truck honking. Okay, so you can see why Annie might have been discouraged with her initial attempts at music. At the bottom in the center, parts of music. There's the word melody and rhythm and chorus and notes. So you see how the teacher can help the students draw out words from the text, elaborate them and define them. Okay, so how is screeching different than croaking? We often use screeching in connection with an owl. So you have your My Permission class. You can try to screech. Who knows what a screech is, but don't get too loud. And what animal is often used when we think about a croak? What sound is that? How is that different than screeching? So you talk about the words, but you're connecting it with sounds when Annie plays, and maybe you build in other words that may or may not have been in the book. So you're building connections among words by categories. This is the network approach. So that is, I'm hoping this is just one example of a freeing way which you can take something that's already existing, and if you are even mandated to teach these words, you can expand on those very words with your students in a very playful way through conversations to make it fun. So hopefully that's gotten you started, but maybe you're thinking, okay, 2,500 word families, 16 words a day. I've already got this basal series telling me to do this. How can I accomplish all of this without being overwhelmed? Am I right? Well, that's our job here at Reading Simplified, is to streamline what can be overwhelming otherwise. So if we have some issues with our reading approaches and we're going to tweak it, let's make something doable out of it. So we're talking today about how to streamline vocabulary instruction for narrative text. First of all, I just want to refer you to this bookmark. It's kind of cool. This is a teacher bookmark. Some core routines that I would use for teaching vocabulary. And a lot of it involves making sure you're doing multisensory instruction. So the words that you're teaching are not just orally provided, but really show the kids what it looks like on the dry erase board. So if you are going to that sheet you'll get in Messenger, there's a link here. The first one is a vocabulary bookmark for ideas for multisensory instruction. So let's go back to one of the words in that set. So making sure it's multisensory. So performance, that's kind of a whopping big word. So I would say performance, it's kind of, the root word is to perform. Annie's brother gave a performance and define it, and then ask kids to write about it, to speak about it, and also write it as you say it. Maybe even have the students do the same. Performance. So you're tying sounds and symbols. This is going to help build their orthographic mapping. This is going to turn this word into a high frequency or a sight word. This is going to be part of what's needed. And it's building in another mental hook. So it's not just the auditory, it's not just the visual, but it's also kinesthetic, especially if they do it. You can even dive deeper if it's if you have time. I noticed there's the sound there and the or sound there and that funny s at the end. Everybody say it with me, performance. So it doesn't take much time, but you're tying in that multisensory system, those cues to help these words get learned. So this ties into everything that we're already doing at Reading Simplified, streamlining, how to connect sounds and symbols. If you don't know about that, go check out some ideas at readingsimplified.com. But that bookmark and some other ideas about just some good routines for making sure that you're more likely to get the words to stick, it's kind of boiled down to this page. So this is kind of like these are some tactics, but the strategy about building networks is what we're talking about today. And this is just to support the network idea. So these are my 3 easy suggestions for taking Dr. Freddy's idea about building networks and also taking her fabulous resources at textproject.org and linking them with what you're already doing. Now, if you go to textproject.org, there's so much there you might get lost. So I'm going to give you some really clear guidelines today about how to make vocabulary instruction easier for your day-to-day planning and to tie it in with what you're already mandated to do if you have a curriculum that's outside of your control, which many of you do. So the 3 ideas are to build networks with required words. We'll talk about that. Build networks of words important to a book's theme, or build networks related to a significant emotion or action in the story. So we're talking about narratives today. Next week, we'll talk about informational, and she's got loads of fabulous resources for that as well. And Sarah says she likes the idea of using categories. She found that she was able to teach a word that has multiple meanings. For instance, the word shed is in a book about insects. Awesome. So she stuck with the meaning associated with insects and other animals that shed their skin. Then you could also talk, oh, but this is also like the shed that's in the back of your house. Maybe there's another meaning of shed. Bark is another word that comes to mind. The tree bark. Or a dog barks, talking about how amazing our language is. You could say it's really tricky and hard, or you can just talk about it, how amazing it is that we know the difference between bark, the different types of barks, and the different types of shed through reading and listening in this world, and we're just picking up all that stuff, but it's really kind of neat, and you don't really think about it until you have these things pointed out. That's what I love about textproject.org. Dr. Freddy is drawing our attention to these unique characteristics of words that you find across all of those 600,000 words that are in the English language. This concept of multiple meanings, one word, many meanings. We can think about that all year long, and kids will love to point out fun things that they find where there's a word that has more than one meaning. Okay, so let's dive into those 3 ways in which you can take the idea of networks and not overwhelm yourself. So let's go into point number 1. Build networks with the required words. In other words, if you have words that are already mandated from your basal or from some other source, and they're not already in some sort of network, try to find a way to build a network yourself. I did this in 30 seconds. I'm not trying to suggest this next thing. I'm going to show you in a second from Annie's gift. This was the original basal required words, and then I did this. I didn't put any time into it. I did notice after I created it, if you just Google the word carefree, there are lots of things you can add to this list. So we could make it more in depth, but at least doing a simple thing like this, often to the right, I've got some antonyms like anxious, whereas the core word carefree was one of the words there in Annie's gift. And ideally, you probably pull maybe a phrase from the book, but it can mean something similar to footloose or idle or easygoing, unworried. What is another word for carefree, you guys? Everybody put a word. I bet we'll come up with 20. Something or a phrase. That's another thing I really like about textproject.org. She's not just talking about synonyms, single words. She's talking about compound words, phrases, idioms, anything that adults already know in their mental network that's associated in whatever way with carefree. You can tie it in, like footloose and fancy free. How many English language learners, for instance, are going to pick that one up easily? But if it was explicitly taught to them in a network, it's going to be a lot easier, right? Okay, so that is just the simplest idea. Take the words you already have, idea number 1, and then build your own network. It can be casual. It does not have to be a dissertation. It can be done quickly, and it can be done with the student support. Put this work up on the wall and talk about it across the week. Second idea, build networks of words important to the book's theme. Okay, so that is what Dr. Freddy did here for us. Annie's was pretty, I think, if I'm inferring, I don't have the book, I'm inferring that she was a little jealous or sad that she didn't have what her siblings had, and it revolved around music. So she created music at the hub and created these different categories. How music makes people move and feel. So the word sway got in there. I think that was tied into... No, it wasn't sway, but stomped. So that's stomped was the category of how music makes people feel, stomp. But then some other words are in there: sway, tap, dance, clap, finger popping, carefree, soulful. So it's one little category that's tied into music somewhat tangentially. And the network is being built on the theme or one concept that's in the book. You can do this yourself and have fun building it with your students. And you can also rely on some resources at Text Project, which I'll show you about soon. Okay, so that was number 2. Take the book that's already being read and build networks of words and concepts and idioms around a theme or a concept. So this is somewhat similar here with number 3, but I kind of designed it for Text Project's resources, which I'm so excited to get into your hands, and I hope I'm going to show you a way to make it really easy to use. So my third idea is to build networks related to a significant emotion or action in a story, and then tie it to Freddy's resources at textproject.org. So let me show you what her cool resources are. I'm going to be revealing some of the ways I would use her resources over the next couple weeks. So one of her fabulous PDFs, it's 100 pages. It's called, but it shouldn't overwhelm you. Once you know what the routine is here, it's going to be really easy to figure out how to use. So it's called Super Synonym Sets for Stories. So she's got these super synonym sets for stories. She picked out words that are pretty ubiquitous. Kids know the meaning of argue and sad and some other, let's see what other words we've got here. Argue. Let me scroll down. Guess. Stay. Are you with me? So you take a simple concept word and you blow it up. So let me show you an example of how to take super synonym sets and actually before I do that, let me show you the other document. So she's got two documents that are very similar. The other one is called Everyday or Exceptional Expressions for Everyday Events. And this one is 173 pages. So there is so much fabulous material here. She's taken words like listen and talk and look and walk and write and check and ask and learn and expanded those words. So take one of those words that ties to a read aloud and then just use this as your word list for the week. So let me show you how that could happen. One of the things that Annie wanted was she wanted to have skills that she didn't have. She wanted what her siblings had. So here's an example from Exceptional Expressions for Everyday Events that you could take and pair it with this book potentially. And the one category says want, as in to have a longing for, to pine, to yearn, to long, to covet, to desire, to wish, to crave. Of course, you would define them and you would elaborate on them with words and get the students to do the same. And you would tie it to multisensory cues. I'm going to crave chocolate all my life. Another category is want, as in to need something, to demand, to require, to need. Down at the bottom, she's got the common phrases like wanted man, what more do you want, gotta have it or have to have it, I want in or out, just where you want them, to your heart's desire. So it's not even, it doesn't even have the word want in it, but it's a phrase that's connected to want. Want for nothing, all I want, free from want. An idiom would be waste not, want not. And then the Spanish connection to desire is, I think, to desear, to require. I'm not even going to pronounce that in Spanish because I can't, but isn't that great? But guess what? It can be completed, or you can start with it blank. Isn't this amazing? Simple way you don't have to do the prep. She's done all the prep for you. And then there's more. So also besides those sort of concepts, she's got the morphology. So there are on the left sort of light pink, peach, inflected endings. So talk about the word want and wants. I want, she wants, we wanted, we are still wanting to get the cafeteria food to be more tasty. In the center, she's got derivational prefixes and suffixes like unwanted, and then the compound words, or maybe in this case, it's more like a phrase, like a want add. And this is repeated over and over again with the exceptional expressions. Similarly, with the super synonyms, I picked out, there's the blank one, by the way. Then using the super synonyms, I picked out the word start. Like she was going to start a new habit, start discovering a new talent that she had. Oh my gosh, look at all the categories there. To start as in the place or times something begins. Common phrases like to start with. Idioms like to start or get the ball rolling. Again, the Spanish connection. To start as in to leave or depart or leave. To get it off the ground, to commence, to start up, to embark on. Very rich. They're all connected. Would this be easier for kids to learn these words when they're connected that way? Now, does this mean that by the end of the week, they'll know all of these words? Maybe not. But will they know more than 6 to 8? That's kind of the question. That's this revolution that we were excited to hear Freddy talk about on our show 2 weeks ago. That's what she's teaching about in this book, teaching words and how they work, small changes for big vocabulary results. Let's see, again, this is the super synonym sets. They're very similar to the exceptional expressions. You also get the blank page with the same categories. You also get this morphological family, inflected endings like starts, started, starting, starter, derivational prefixes and suffixes like to restart. And then you get the blank page for that. So each of these core hub words, if you will, there are about 4 pages. Actually, some of them there's 5 where there's like a teacher background information page. So it's really rich. It's easy to use. Just print it off. And all you have to do is think about which of these terms can tie into something that you're already reading. And then build the networks in rich dialogue, and then give them the opportunity to write about them, and then read more of them, and see if they can find them in their books. Okay, so those are my 3 tips for building vocab networks in narrative text. So if you are already required to read words, just number 1, take those words and build a network with them. Expand upon the words that are there, build networks among the words, and don't feel like you're bound by just that list. Another point would be to build networks of words that are important to a theme of the book: forgiveness, overcoming. These themes, you can think of lots of words that would tie to that, right? Words that you'd pull from the book, and words that you pull from the students' lives and their own vocabularies. And number 3, build networks related to significant emotions or actions. And that's what I think that these documents, everyday expressions, will be a fairly easy way to add that into your routine. So I'm hoping that this will pay off for you guys, because I know you're overextended. I know you're being asked to teach too much, but what I've been trying to teach here at Reading Simplified is the main thing that you have to do is get kids to rapidly learn how to read words so that they could read a lot. And through reading a lot, they're more likely to have the vocabulary that they need to be able to understand everything. And so that's what we do here at Reading Simplified. We teach you a streamlined approach for getting anyone up to grade level in reading rapidly so they can love reading and read widely. But there's another big part of being a good reader, being a good student, and that's learning the meanings of words. And so Dr. Freddy has shown us that if we think about words in terms of word families and try to create networks among them instead of the hit or miss 5 to 6 words randomly picked from a book, will probably have a lot bigger impact. And that's why I kind of grayed out that small circle. But really, we're going to learn a lot more words, won't we, through this networking approach. So these are the levers that we have in our disposal. When you feel self-doubt about the overwhelm about how many things you're doing, can you tie back to these 2 first core ones? Am I giving students rich oral language through read-alouds in my own language? Am I giving them opportunities to read a lot, have a lot of eyes on print time? And then, of course, are they going to be doing a lot with words themselves and not just receiving the sounds of the words, but actually writing them, producing them, speaking them, and getting them to be detectives, word detectives. Would you like future complimentary trainings like this here at Reading Simplified? Then make sure you ring the bell here at YouTube to become a subscriber so that you learn more of our ways of streamlining instruction and accelerating students' reading achievement. And you can also find us on Facebook at Reading Simplified, usually on Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We go live with other complimentary trainings, and we give away some freebies for teachers and parents. So I hope to see you here again next time on YouTube or even on Facebook. Take care.